Welcome to the Monday edition of Anglican Unscripted. You're watching two of your favorite people talk about your favorite topic. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's July 28th, 2014.
Right, let's move on to our first story. And our first story is every Monday we're going to have a new segment called What's on Unscripted this week, so we can give you a preview of the stories we're going to talk about. On Wednesday, we're going to do a follow-up to the Nashotah House story. You remember that Catherine Jefferts Schori was invited to speak there. We're going to tell you what happened and the ramifications, and we're speaking to people from Nashotah House. On Friday, we're going to talk about the ACNA and women's ordination. Obviously, there's some very big dynamics that are going to happen over the next couple of years. And George and I are going to talk to you about what's happening and the ramifications. George,
we may have some developing stories as well, Kevin. You know, Catherine Jefferts Schori could invade Poland.
Yes.
It could happen. Breaking news will fit in, but we're now moving to sort of develop our stories a bit further, give them a bit more polish, so we can present them in a better way for you.
Well, it is the anniversary of World War I right now, so that Catherine Jefferts Schori...
She did, she wasn't there, but still, I blame her.
I do too. It's, of course. Also, George is going to go through a tumultuous time in his life in the next 2 months. A lot of people do life crises. They buy a Corvette, get a guitar, lots of different things. George is going to combine them. He is sending his twin daughters off to college. He has accepted a new position at another church in Florida, and he's moving. What are you doing, George?
We're moving to Lecanto, Crystal River area of Central Florida. That's about an hour north of Orlando, an hour north of Tampa, about an hour south of Gainesville. And for those of you who don't know the geography, that's on the west coast, on the Gulf of Mexico. And it's an exciting time. I've left my parish of just over 3 years and starting at Shepherd of the Hills Episcopal Church as their rector.
This is a special segment of Anglican Unscripted. I have Jeff Walton. He's with the IRD in Washington, and they're a special think tank communications people that look at, well, in Jeff's case, he looks at the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Church to see how they're doing, see how they're faring. And he did a special report this month on the Diocese of Virginia, which is really because they excommunicated some of their parishes, is trying to do some restarts. Let's go through the churches. They have Falls Church. They have in
Church of the Epiphany in Herndon.
They have the one
St.
in
Stephen's in Eastville.
Yep.
And St. Margaret's in Woodbridge, Virginia.
How's that restart going?
It's been a lot slower than the diocese has expected. Mm-hmm. In 2012, the diocese started an initiative called Dayspring, and this was intended to take properties that were awarded in court proceedings to the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia and manage the real estate and try, where possible, to restart new Episcopal congregations. And this has taken a good deal of time and a good deal of resources by the diocese, but this is something that they've prioritized.
Well, reading your report, I noticed that they're only able to get conservative churches to replace and lease out to.
Yeah, what's happened is none of these congregations really has been able to become self-sustaining at this point. Mm-hmm. They are often relying upon diocesan contributions and grant money in order to keep the buildings operable. And the diocese has encouraged them to transition off of this support by finding major long-term tenants in order to share the buildings with. In many cases, these congregations that they have found are conservative evangelical congregations, the congregations that you would not necessarily expect to be natural partners with liberal Episcopal parishes.
Now, it's interesting because in many cases these new congregations have the same theology, methodology, Bible, understanding of Scripture, hermeneutics, everything except for the apostolic succession that the people who got kicked out did.
Yeah, and if you look, each of these congregations has faith statements available on their website, all very doctrinally traditionalist, orthodox. Just to give you an idea of who these congregations are, in the case of the Falls Church, the Episcopal congregation primarily uses the older, smaller, historic sanctuary. The larger sanctuary, which seats about 800, is rented out on Sunday mornings to an African-American evangelical congregation called the Rock Christian Center. And they have a very conservative statement on their website, not only about traditional Christian teachings in regards to broader issues, but also they have conservative statements about human sexuality as well, which is interesting because this was one of the issues that sparked division in the Diocese of Virginia. In the case of Episcopal Church of the Epiphany in Herndon, the congregation has signed a lease with a Southern Baptist congregation that is primarily Korean. And they also espouse a traditionalist theology and conservative faith and morals. Another instance is Church of the Apostles in Fairfax. Now, Church of the Apostles did not have what's called a continuing Episcopal congregation. So the diocese opted to take the building, which was awarded to them in court proceedings, and place it on the market. In that case, who did they find to purchase the building but DC Metro Church, a conservative evangelical congregation that's based in Alexandria that was looking to open a multi-site campus in Fairfax City. So you've got all these instances of liberal Episcopalians booting conservative Anglicans out of the properties, then being unable to either fill them with people or provide enough revenue in order to keep the properties up. So they're having to sign leases with conservative evangelicals.
The ironic thing here is Bishop Peter Lee used to negotiate with the people who wanted to leave, and he was told not to by a certain Catherine Jefferts Schori, and I guess Frank Griswold also stepped on his feet and said, "You can't do that. We're not negotiating with those people who want to leave." And so now you're stuck with the properties. Jeffrey, I want to thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us on Anglican Unscripted. Three, two, one. On vacation in a wonderful state called Wisconsin, I have Allan Haley on the other line, and well, we're here to talk court stuff, but I just want to know, do you send your calendar to the diocese and to the courts before you leave so they know to break news on your vacation?
There must be some back network I'm unaware of that goes on there, Kevin, because certainly the courts decide to do things only when I'm away on vacation.
So you tell Mrs. Haley, hey, you're not going to believe this, but I have to write up a summary for my webpage, and I have to appear on Anglican TV, and it's going to be kind of chaotic again.
Right.
She must be very patient with you.
She is.
Okay, so we've got the first big news is obviously from Illinois. The courts have sided with the judge. How does that work?
Okay, the 4th District Appellate Court in Springfield, we had the oral arguments there in April, and I was present for them, and that gave an inkling of the way they were going to decide. And sure enough, the three justices on the panel ruled unanimously that the trial judge had gotten it just right, that there was no language in the Episcopal Church Constitution or canons that prevented a diocese from withdrawing, prevented a diocese from amending its governing documents in any way whatsoever, including taking out its succession clause, and that the Dennis canon itself did not apply to the property of a diocese, so there was no way the Episcopal Church or its successor diocese could claim any kind of a trust interest in the real property or the bank accounts of the Diocese of Quincy. And so they affirmed him on all counts.
We have that constitutional right, freedom of association. Was that in play here?
Well, it was sort of the subtext. There wasn't any express mention of the First Amendment freedom of association, but it clearly was based on that in the sense that you have a freedom to come together and say, okay, we'll accede to the Constitution and canons, and now we don't like them anymore, what you're doing with them, so we will secede from the Constitution and canons. And that is based on the freedom of expression. The Episcopal Church tries to turn that around and say that the First Amendment has to protect the Episcopal Church the way it sets up its polity and its structure and governance. And we've set it up in a way that we understand that dioceses can't leave. To which the courts say, well, fine, if you want that protected by the First Amendment, all you have to do is put it in writing and express it in so many words in your constitution, or make your presiding bishop a pope and make all the dioceses subject to his authority like the Roman Catholics do.
Well, can they do that in reverse? Because I wouldn't mind if that existed and I signed on again.
Right.
But we're talking about reversing the polity.
Yeah, and I don't think now they can do that because, as I say, the First Amendment right of the diocese to withdraw trumps everything at this point, the way things have been set up. And actually, this case could become a very important precedent for all the other diocesan cases, because it's the first one to have reached the appellate level and first time we've gotten a definitive appellate decision on this subject.
Well, the defendants in the case, or I guess the suers in the case, are no longer a diocese. They also joined up with Illinois?
That's right. They merged themselves out of existence. Mm-hmm. And that was just before Judge Ortval came out with his trial decision last September. And so they merged with the Diocese of Chicago, became the so-called Deanery of Peoria. Mm-hmm. But that's not a separate legal entity. It's the Diocese of Chicago, which is the legal entity. There is no more any Episcopal Church Diocese of Quincy. And so that is a problem for them also, because going forward with this case, the Episcopal Diocese of Quincy was the only one that had ostensibly even a putative claim to the property and bank accounts of the former group. And their say-so, or their claim for that, now is gone because they've gone out of legal existence. All that's left is the Episcopal Church itself, which is an unincorporated association operating under New York law, which prohibits unincorporated associations from holding title to any real property or bank accounts for that matter. And so therefore they can't take title to anything. They have to work through their corporate arm, which is the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society based in New York, and it's not even a party to the case. So I don't know where they can take it from here. They could file a petition for review, for leave to appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court. But who's going to carry the appeal? The Episcopal Church has no stake in the case anymore because it can't get title to property or money. And that's all that they're fighting over.
Okay, let's move on then to the Diocese of South Carolina. I was reading excerpts from one very frustrated judge. Apparently there's rule to law, and some people were not playing by the rules. Tell me the background here.
Yeah, that was a problem throughout the trial for the Episcopal Church side and its attorneys. They seemed to think that the rules were written for other people but not for them, in the way that they treated the disclosure of expert testimony and expert witnesses, and the judge had to call them on it a number of times during the trial. In the first instance, they did not even bother listing this one expert witness they wanted to call, Robert Klein, who was going to give testimony supposedly on the confusion of the brand name Episcopal that's been the result of the split in the two dioceses in South Carolina. And he'd done a lot of market research. The rumors that went around said his work had cost the Episcopal Church $1 million or so. And then he was prevented from testifying by Judge Goodstein because the Episcopal Church attorneys had not bothered to disclose his name to the other side on the list of witnesses. And not only once did they fail to do that, they failed to do it 3 times. She'd given them 3 separate chances to list all their expert witnesses. And the attorney, the hapless attorney who was trying to explain to the judge what happened, said, well, we just hadn't made up our mind as of that date. You told us to make up our mind. And she said, that doesn't fly. I'm not going to, this is unusual remedy, but you are not going to be allowed to put him on the stand. You did not follow the rules. And then with another witness, the distinguished historian, Professor Walter Edgar, the Episcopal Church attorneys again had not disclosed him as an expert witness. they said he would come and testify to facts and historical facts. Well, then that was the only thing he was allowed to do. He was allowed to say, on this date they signed this document, on this date they did this, on this date they met and decided this, and so on. But he could not tie it together in any opinionated way, and so he couldn't draw any conclusions that helped the Episcopal Church. He just strung together a lot of historical facts, and that kind of wasn't much point to that. It just showed that while the Diocese of South Carolina was a member in good standing of the Episcopal Church, it played by the rules. It went along with what they did, and it made contributions to the church as a whole, and did everything that a normal diocese does. But that says nothing about the ability, again, of it to amend its documents and pull itself out of the church.
Well, yeah, those are the interesting things here. We're finally finding in two cases now where the judge is like, listen, this is not the way we conduct ourselves in court. However, we've seen in the past all these Hail Marys conducted by the Episcopal Church, like on the West Coast in California, have worked.
That's right.
Why does it work so well there, but not so well over here?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I would love to do a comparative study sometime between the relative degree of education in.
Well, I'm wondering if it's the drug culture, it's something from Berkeley left over. The rule of law is supposed to pretty much be blind and apply everywhere, but you see these people that just buy the line the Episcopal Church says. The Episcopal Church will say we've always done it this way, even though there's no documents or fact to back it up, but the legal judges say, yeah, you're right, you have.
Well, based on personal observation now, I've witnessed firsthand the judges in South Carolina and in Quincy, and I have to say they work a lot harder than the California judges I've seen on the cases that I've participated here in California. The judges in Illinois and South Carolina were far more committed to the case, to read the documents, to understand the arguments. And the judges in California were very laid back, and laid back only in the sense of, this is just another case crossing my thing, and I've got so many things on my plate, and I've got to do this and one other, so I'll just let the attorneys tell me what I ought to do, kind of thing. And it's very disappointing. We will, however, I think, get a full hearing at the Court of Appeal when we take the case up in San Joaquin. And I'm expecting that to, once again, turn the trial judge around and say, no, you didn't get it right. Go back and go for a third time. And we'll see. But we're talking at least a year or more away.
Oh, geez. Well, there seems to be some value in being able to present your case first.
Yes, that, at least in that sense, you get the first impression on the judge, which sometimes is the strongest. But in the end, it comes down to, what does your case really consist of? And do you have the actual solid arguments on your side of documents backed up by actual history and facts? Or are you just trying to make something up and make up the evidence that supports it? And so if you're trying to present fluff, why, most judges can see through that. And that doesn't help you whether you go first or second. But it certainly helps to go first with a very solid case, yes.
Allan, I want to thank you for taking 11 minutes out of your vacation and helping us out here on Anglican Unscripted. Now, I don't know when next year you're leaving, but I'm sure at that point we'll be getting the follow-up for San Joaquin and others on your next vacation.
I'm sure we will.
Thank you so much for your time.